I need to talk about the new Fallout show. If you haven't been here before, I'm If Then Create, a software engineer, a cozy gamer, and a wannabe game dev. And if you're thinking, well, Fallout isn't really a cozy game, I promise you it is the way that I play it. I have loved Fallout since I was in high school. I have such a vivid memory of the first time I saw Fallout 3. It was in my friend's basement, and I was watching her shoot a blowfly with VATS. And that was such a game changer moment to me, VATS, because I had never been good at shooter games. I kind of avoided them because I don't have great aim, I don't have great reaction time. But VATS made what is essentially an accommodation for that, but in a way that's cool. It's integrated, it's fun, it's an amazing mechanic that's so rich lore-wise that you would never look at it as like, oh, well, only bad players use VATS. VATS is a delight for everybody, and it opened up this whole world of gaming for me. So Fallout has a very special place in my heart, and I'm so excited about the new show. I've only watched episode 1, so do me a favor, if you've watched farther than that, don't spoil anything in my comments. I'll use timestamps to indicate when I'm going to start talking about my spoilery thoughts on the show, but I'll start with some general overall thoughts before you have to click away if you don't want to see spoilers yet. Like I said, I'm a big fan of VATS. I think it's such a uniquely Fallout game feel with this slow-mo but intense gore, and all contrasted against this background of 1950s nostalgia. It's a really joyful, thrilling feeling for me as a player, and I think the show nails that. Not in replicating VATS specifically, but there are some moments of combat that you kind of slow down, and it's over this like 50s soundtrack, and it's a delight. I get that same thrill, and I think the show really nailed it. I also want to talk about costuming. I was so worried when I saw the announcement for the show that the costuming would feel cheesy and bad. I mean, the Vault jumpsuit is not a flattering outfit. And in the games, that's fine because it's supposed to be cheesy. And I was so worried that that would translate on screen to looking really bad. And it doesn't. I think that the costuming made these intentional choices to, in the pre-war scenes, keep the outfits very saturated. So when we go into the Vault world next, the saturation feels intentional and it feels in place in the world. The Vault suits don't seem cheesy or out of place. They just kind of fit into the world, and I think they did a great job with costuming. And that continues into scenes we see in the Brotherhood of Steel. The power armor looks very cool. The outfits the recruits are wearing look very cool. The scribes and the higher levels in the Brotherhood of Steel, all the outfits look great. I think they're a great interpretation of the outfits in the game because they feel video gamey. Like you can tell what they're referencing, and they're saturated and they're fun, but they still fit in. They don't feel out of place or cheap. I think the world building has also been really good. I am somebody who started playing Fallout 3 and now I play the most Fallout 4, and I haven't played a lot of the other games. So there's a lot of lore that I don't know about. Like, I can't tell you a bunch about the Enclave, and most of my playthroughs are very Minuteman focused, so I don't really know a bunch about the Brotherhood of Steel besides what I've read on wikis and seen in other people's playthroughs. That said, I think the show does an incredible job of sort of drip feeding information, and I'll get more into that when I talk about the spoilers of the Vault. I think it's important, though, that I didn't feel like I was missing out. I didn't feel like I had to go look up background information in wikis while I was watching. It's presented well, and I think it does a good job of it. The show gives us a glimpse of pre-war America and then follows 3 main characters: in a vault, in the Brotherhood of Steel, and out in the Wastelands. And I'm really excited about that framing because I want to see where all those stories go, even though I do think that the pacing struggled a bit. And that's fair. I think it's hard to build equal, believable motivation for 3 characters when you're trying to divide your time amongst 3 different locations. Also, the cast is stacked. And it looks like we're getting a lot more familiar faces in the next few episodes just based on the previews, but in this current episode, there were 2 times that I had to stop and be like, I recognize that actor, but I don't know from where. And for me, that was Zach Cherry, who I loved in Severance, still waiting on season 2, and Michael Christopher from Mr. Robot. Both were absolutely delightful. I'm going to talk about the show specifically now. So this is your warning that explicit spoilers for the first episode are coming up. Okay, still here? Let's go. The show starts off in pre-war America at a kid's birthday party, and I'll admit I was a little worried that they were showing pre-war America as too iconic. I think that sometimes people forget that pre-war America was very tense. It was on the brink of war. People would have been starving. People would have been struggling to get the resources that they needed. That's what the resource wars were all about. And one of my gripes with the pre-war scenes in Fallout 4 is that you're living in this pretty idyllic community. And I was glad to see that we got scenes of the mom at the birthday party repeatedly turning off the TV, turning off the radio. They made it clear that this family was exceptionally well off and purposely looking the other way. This was a family who could avoid the effects of war and were choosing not to look directly at it, which I thought was handled well. The nods to things in video games like the kids' cartoon were absolutely incredible. The little girl who's playing the Ghoul's daughter, amazing. And it really reminded me of the Last of Us show when we got the pre-apocalypse scenes with, again, a dad and his daughter, which I'm not complaining about. I love that show too. The background of the thumb line was delightfully done. And my stomach dropped when the little girl was holding her thumb up and goes, "Is it your thumb or mine?" For sizing, because you knew that whole sequence that the bombs were coming. Anybody who's played the game, and even if you hadn't, the episode is titled The End. You know that the bombs are going to drop in this first episode. So having that sense of unease contrasted with this incredible kid's birthday party with a celebrity guest and cake was a delightful unease that really captured the Fallout games. And having the little girl do the line about the thumb was wonderful. It fit just perfectly. And then seeing the bombs drop in multiple locations, realizing that the whole country is kind of screwed, made my stomach drop in the most delightful and most Fallout way. After those pre-war scenes, we skip to the vault with Lucy. I loved that she started by listing her hobbies to the vault committee in a way that assured me that she was capable. Sometimes it takes a little bit too much suspension of disbelief to believe that these main characters, these naive, fish out of water, born yesterday characters can really pick up a gun and be great at it. But they gave Lucy enough interest with rifle club that I know that she's going to know how to be able to shoot a gun, even though she's never done it in a violent way before. And I really appreciated that. I was shocked by how many incest jokes they had coming straight out of the gate. And that threw me for a second, but I think I got back on board with it because it happens a few times. In her interview with the committee, she mentions that she's having difficulty finding a long-term partner that she isn't related to. There's repeated jokes about her biological cousin being in love with her. And apparently, canonically, they have had sex before, but that's not a good long-term sexual practice. All the vault dwellers are very blunt about procreation, asking about sperm count, and I thought that was really well done. Especially when you consider that in the Fallout games, the Vault Dweller is usually who you identify with most. In most Fallout games, you play as a Vault Dweller or a descendant of a Vault Dweller. The Vault Dwellers are the closest thing we have to the pre-war America, which is the most similar to us not living in the Fallout universe, so usually they're our audience stand-in. And I thought it was really neat that they made some intentional choices to show us very bluntly that these people have different morals, social taboos, and values than we do. The people in the vault believe very strongly in procreation and carrying on the American dream and humanity, and so there's not as many taboos around sex. Even when Lucy gets married, she is ready to go. She looks at her husband who's just taken his clothes off and goes, "Okie dokie," which I thought was delightful, and it also sets up for us this very specific code of ethics in the vault. Her dad, the overseer, takes that even a step further in his speech at her wedding about how the wastelanders, the surface people at top, have sort of lost the way. But the people in the vault, they're the ones who are good. They're the ones who are going to save humanity. And that's so fascinating to me. The idea of we can't let the wasteland change us. We are the heart of humanity. We are the heart of America. And we're just going to keep that going. Because honestly, I think in an apocalypse, the situation would inevitably change you. And I'm sure that's what we're going to see explored. But it's so different than the approach of the Minutemen in Fallout 4, who are just trying to make life better for the wastelanders on the surface. And when I play Fallout 4, I always side with the Minutemen. Never side with the Institute, never side with the Brotherhood. For me, it's Minutemen or bust, because I believe that the future can be built with the people we have now. I also thought it was so interesting that they put so much hope on their children. The announcement at her wedding that surface levels of radiation are showing her children might be the generation to get to live outside and repopulate. The fact that that was met with cheers filled me with so much unease, because if I was faced with the information that my generation was not going to be able to go outside, I would be crushed. And maybe that's just because I don't want kids. It's just such a different value system for me to see people cheering that they've done their job by spending their entire lives not having access to the things they see as what gives life purpose. Anyway, back to the show. The show really threw me with the fact that there are underground tunnels between the vaults, because as far as I know, that hasn't been a thing in games. Usually vaults are very, very isolated, but you have the Overseer, her father, who I think he said he was from Vault 31, they're in Vault 33, and she's marrying somebody from Vault 32, and there are apparently these underground tunnels that connect all the vaults. And I was so captured by this new piece of lore and trying to figure out how does that work that I kind of forgot that most vaults have an experiment going on. Truly, I was so immersed in this new world of trying to figure out, okay, there's an overseer and there's also a vault council, and they also can talk to other vaults, that I kind of even forgot to wonder, like, what is Vault-Tech's secret here? And maybe that is part of the secret there, that they have this marriage program that goes on, or maybe these are 3 control vaults that figured that out independently, or maybe we're rewriting some of the lore here where vaults tend to know about each other and talk to each other. From the preview, it looks like we're going to learn more about what was going on in the other vault, so hopefully those questions get answered soon. The reveal that her husband and the people from the other vaults were raiders came as a delightful surprise to me. I thought, based on their costuming, and honestly the hair was what gave it away for me a lot, and of course the fact that one of them was stabbing food at the wedding reception, I thought that their vault must be starving. My interpretation up until the reveal was that their vault must be going through more than just a wheat blight, but they must be starving and desperate. And I thought the reveal was going to be something like, maybe they aren't even actually fertile and they're arranging this trade with a breeder who can't produce kids because they're so desperate for seeds to like restart, and maybe they're not doing well at all. The fact that Monty ended up being a raider, oh my God, when Lucy puts on her Pip-Boy and the radiation goes through the roof and she realizes he's from the surface, thrilling, absolutely delightful. That reveal took me so by surprise. I loved it. I thought it was so clever too, because everybody who's played the games, we know what raiders are. We're very familiar with raiders. And the reveal and the ensuing fight after that with all the raiders from the other vaults who aren't dressed up in the vault suits to fake that they're vault dwellers anymore, but instead are wearing more of their raider gear, was such a thrill. My only critique about the vault sections of the show is after all that happens and we skip away for a little bit and then we come back, the fact that Lucy is so immediately willing to leave the vault, I thought they could have spent a little more time on her motivation. It seemed very easy for her to get out of the vault, and I would be shocked if that's the first time in 200 years that somebody has left, given that all she had to do was take an elevator and then open the door. But it seems like there's a lot more mystery surrounding that with her mother, how her father recognized the raider leader, so I'm sure we'll revisit that. Next up, we have Maximus at the Brotherhood of Steel. Like I've said before, I've never done a Brotherhood of Steel playthrough. I don't really agree with the Brotherhood of Steel. The Brotherhood is a group based on the idea that technology is what is dangerous. So they need to go out, collect technology, keep it out of the wrong hands, and prevent humanity from falling into the same trap that they did before. The reason that I've never agreed with their stance, though, is that the bombs didn't drop just because people had access to them. It wasn't they discovered nuclear power and just decided to do it for fun. There was so much lore in the Fallout games about the resource wars leading up to things. People were desperate. People were scared. People were starving. People did not have access to the things they needed to, and countries and leaders were panicking. And that's why I tend to side with the Minutemen, with the idea that if you give people things to meet their basic resources, that's how we achieve safety and harmony and peace, not just by preventing access to the tools of destruction. It's also interesting with Maximus, we can see specifically how these essentially fanatics become fanatics when they owe their entire life and safety on an organization like the Brotherhood, and they know that that's dependent on being loyal to the Brotherhood. Without the Brotherhood, Maximus has nothing, is nothing, and so he's willing to do a lot more than he would be if he wasn't in such a dire situation. And I like that they displayed it this way. I think it's easy to get sucked into the Brotherhood just because they have really cool armor and they have cool weapons and they have access to the cool technology that remains in these wastelands. But I think the show did a good job of also displaying their religious garb, religious rituals. The show kind of invites you to question, is this a cult? Are they the good guys? The branding that happens on Maximus's back, he's clearly thrilled with it, and everybody around him is jealous, but it's brutal enough that we as the audience can sort of step back and say, what's going on here? Maximus seems kind of not very good at being a Brotherhood of Steel initiate. He has trouble recognizing the diagrams, he doesn't seem to get recognized very often, and I wasn't sure if our takeaway was supposed to be that he sabotaged his friend Dane to get the position he did. I'm really not sure how to read him at all. That's not a criticism. I'm just excited to see where the show goes with him. Is he truly loyal to the Brotherhood? Is he actually somebody that could never hurt a fly? Where are his limits and breaking points, and are we going to find those? The third character and the third section we get to are the Ghoul, who is the celebrity who performed at the child's birthday party in the very beginning of the episode. So we know this is a pre-war Ghoul who's been around for 200 plus years. I am so fascinated by the lore in this point, and I have so many questions. Different parts of Fallout games have suggested to us different things about ghouls, how they survive, if they need to eat or not. There's a side quest in Fallout 4 where there's a boy who is trapped in a fridge, and he's been there since the bombs dropped over 200 years ago. In the fridge, he became irradiated, and so he hasn't had food or water or been outside of the fridge in 200 years, and isn't a feral ghoul, just became a ghoul by irradiation and has been there in the fridge, completely sane, waiting for 200 years, unaware that 200 years passed. And that's really interesting for us in terms of ghoul lore, because it implies that ghouls do not need food, they do not need water, and they don't necessarily go feral based on just time or lack of stimulation. But we get different information from different ghouls in the Fallout games. There's a Brotherhood of Steel side quest also in Fallout 4, where you have somebody in the Brotherhood who's been feeding feral ghouls, and it's supposed to be this question of like, do they still deserve to live if they really need this food? So they do need food, but also the boy in the fridge didn't need food, but do they need oxygen? It's unclear. It's always been kind of unclear what ghouls need to survive, or if they'd just be totally okay shut away. So I was so intrigued the moment that we meet the ghoul in this graveyard where he's buried underground, but there are like IV bags of something glowing dripping into there. And that signals to the other characters, oh, this guy's a mutant. So they know he's a ghoul based on the IV bags. And that, I had to pause and like think about it, because is that food that's going to the ghoul? Is that confirming that ghouls need to eat? Is the fact that it's irradiated confirming for us that he needs to eat irradiated things? Or is that just keeping him like docile or like in a state of semi-consciousness? I am so confused by it, and I'm so looking forward to learning more about the ghoul. I also want to talk about the ghoul's makeup. The ghoul in the show looks far more human than any ghoul we've seen in Fallout games, and I'm sort of split on that choice, because on one hand, I would have liked to see a ghoul that's actually falling apart. But on the other hand, I understand that when you're using real actors to do this, it's almost nicer that they didn't limit what he could do with his facial expressions or anything else. So I'm split. And I think we'll see as the show goes on how I feel about that. The final teaser that we get from this is that there's somebody who's escaped from the Enclave. And in the show, we don't have much information about what the Enclave is. And again, as somebody who's focused mainly on Fallout 4, I don't know a ton about the Enclave either, so I am very intrigued to see where they go with that. Overall, I think it's incredibly interesting that we have these three main characters who all have such starkly different value systems and ethics systems. You have the people in the vault, who I would argue are a very lawful good, or at least good in the way that they think of good. They're not necessarily looking out for wastelanders because they don't see them as civilized people, but they think of themselves as they are good. They are willing to sacrifice themselves for others in the vault, and they follow a very strict code of ethics. You exist to create the future of humanity and get married and have babies, and they respect that. They look out for their family. They have this strict code of what is okay in their society and what is not, and they are very bound to it. With the Brotherhood, honestly, they're a lot closer to a true neutral. I wouldn't argue that they're explicitly good or evil, because they're not really helping people in the Commonwealth, though we've seen other iterations of the Brotherhood of Steel do that. And they're not really just taking out wastelanders for fun. They have their own goals, which is collecting technology and keeping it out of the wrong hands. And they, in their little Brotherhood cult, are bound to rules within that. But it's unclear what actions are going to get Maximus rewarded or punished, especially if he was the one to put razors in Dane's shoes. I think it's safe to say that there are definitely evil people in the Brotherhood, and there are definitely good people in the Brotherhood. And I expect in the next few episodes, we're going to explore how loyal Maximus is to the Brotherhood, where are his breaking points, and where is his line in the sand ethically. And then we have the Ghoul, who seems to be very chaotic evil, just based on the fact that he came out of the ground and immediately killed 3 people. Though he seems to have an internal code with his mantra of just, we take it as it comes, which he says in pre-war and now in 219 years later. And so maybe his own code of ethics is truly just man looks out for himself. Maybe we'll see that change, maybe we won't. He's clearly been the victim of a lot of violence if he's been, kept prisoner in a grave for dozens of years. And also, I'm going to assume that he lost his daughter in a pretty devastating way. So he's been the victim of some stuff that might explain these choices, but he does seem to be the most chaotic and unethical character we've seen so far. The gap that I see in those three characters is the role of the Minutemen in Fallout 4. Are there any Wastelanders that we're going to meet that are just people who are going about their day to day, the average person who's been born into this post-apocalypse? Is there anybody who's looking out for them? Is there anything that's going to make their lives better or worse? Or are we not going to explore the day-to-day Wastelanders at all? Either way, I'm so excited to see where this goes. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. I would love to do one of these as I watch my way through the series. If you loved it or hate it, or you think there's things I missed, please let me know. I'm just dying to have more people to talk about this show with. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far in the video. Please know how much I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. If you're interested in more of my Fallout content, I have a playlist of settlement builds. If you're interested in my own games, I've made some videos about those as well. I'll see you next time.